kind of spur of the moment, just looking online, just kind of was working with a Reptar here and looked online for some iguana closet conversions, and I hadn't seen any. There's a few, but I don't think people really understand kind of what it may require or could look like even, or so kind of want to just go through, and I've had this one up and running for about 5 years, and kind of the do's and don'ts and maybe things I would have done differently. This is Reptar here, and he's about 11 years old, maybe 12. I had a female, Sandy. She passed away a couple years ago. She was gravid for the third time and ended up getting egg bound. So, but yeah, Reptar's about 12 years old, maybe 11 or 12 years old, and he's doing well. He's got his tail completely. Major thing that obviously when I made this cage, I didn't want any pinch points. First of all, maybe tip number one: no pinch points. I did not want him losing his tail. He's been in here for some time. Obviously, you can tell. They climb around. That's kind of his little area. He sits under. I got multiple lights in here. As well as a heat lamp just to keep it up, because clearly I don't have a a door on it. He stays in there. He'll roam the room maybe once, kind of circle it, come up to the top, of the stairs and scratch on the door. I'll let him out. He'll circle there once and kind of come back down. Gives him that freedom of, he can do stuff like this. But there used to be a waterfall in here where they'd come down and bathe in and kind of hang out. And, obviously I had a filter underneath and defecation was going on, but it ended up kind of being more of a problem with getting moisture underneath the cabinet area. Filtration, it's not like a fish tank. I got fish tanks too, and it's a little bit different obviously with the iguana. So that I'll eventually remove that whole tub, but he's trained to kind of go to the bathroom in there, so for now it's kind of easy and works. So we'll see, but maybe one day get it up and running, tile underneath to keep that moisture completely sealed. But yeah, it's been going on about 5 years now, and there's touch-up things I do here and there, and things I would have done differently is I like making vivariums and stuff, and so I use like if you're familiar with vivariums, you've seen like the foam and where they put the peat moss and silicone and peat moss up there, and I've done that, but you could see it's just, the iguanas are so destructive that, they'll just pull apart anything in there. It looks good, but it doesn't last. So where he moves most frequently, he just tears it up. You can see up here too. Fake plants, of course. Nothing attached, so I can take those out and clean them. Iguanas are dusty, dirty animals. So the maintenance, I keep up on it quite a bit. It doesn't smell down in the basement, and it's not that bad, especially having an enclosure like this, But he's obviously just coming out of shed. He's an awesome male. Big boy. Being I had the female with him, he was really aggressive for a majority of the first part of his life. Iguanas go through like a puberty. So probably I'd say from 2 to 3 years old, they'll hit kind of this puberty streak until they're 5, 6 years old. And he was very aggressive, tail whips. He'd try and bite me. I never got bit by him, but he would if he could. And then one day, 5, 6 years old, he kind of just snapped out of it. With that said, because of how aggressive he was, I don't like seeing, kind of these kids in there talking to their parents, hey, I want an iguana, the parents do it because they don't understand kind of what it requires. It obviously requires at least a habitat like this, at least. And then, potentially how aggressive, a male could potentially get, especially if you have multiple iguanas. you know, that's real. You know, I mean, catching him was like wrestling with him. I mean, he barrel rolls. He would, you know, tail whip you. He's got me several times real good. But again, just knowing how to handle that aggression, you know. I mean, if I wore a red shirt, it was over for 24 hours. He was that aggressive. You know, if he's seen me, he'd charge me. He'd charge. I had older, you know, when he was a lot smaller, I had him in different custom habitats, not as big as the closet, but you know, he'd charge the side of the cages, and yeah, he was pretty aggressive. But again, you know, once he hit about 6 years old, he kind of just snapped out of it, and he's been super mellow, real mellow, in fact, ever since. And you know, he's been wonderful. Likes being held. I kind of help him through the shed once he's kind of finishing up. But let's see how big his head is, maybe. Yeah, he's big. He's got this little tear in his dewlap. I kind of like it though. He's had it for, I can't tell you how long, so it just adds character. But he loves his cage, his environment. You know, he's able to climb up easily. Keep his legs straight, his limbs strong. Sorry. He doesn't fall. You know, I obviously attach bark and stuff like that, just, you know, kind of hold points for him all the way up so that he's comfortable and able to move up freely through it. Nighttime he goes up there and he just sits up there and hangs out. Otherwise he's pretty much here under this heat lamp the majority of the day until he comes down and eats or does his thing. But yeah, iguanas are not easy animals to have just because of the environment requirements. You know, I don't have any humidifiers or anything in here. This is in my basement. I'm not going to show the basement, you know. But I have, you know, aquariums. I got birds. I got birds older than me. I got fish tanks, orchidariums, vivariums. So I'm not, you know, the most driest place down here in the basement. But I do obviously bathe him, you know, and throw him in the tub. And I got a big sink downstairs that I'll let him soak in and kind of hang out, kind of help with that. But as far as humidity, I haven't had any issues with him. His sheds are good. And he's lived a long time. But yeah, you know, it's the environment requirements again. You know, no aquariums. They just don't gain the strength in their limbs. You know, a lot of people will get aquariums like this and then they convert them to a closet or something like this, and which is great. But you know, growing up in a small aquarium or something, you know, where they don't climb, they may have weak limbs, and the first time they fall, they could break a limb. So I suggest the first time you get an iguana, you know, have that environment ready for them so that they can climb and gain that strength that they need. And obviously they got big enough, the two of them, that I did have to put them in here. In fact, he was so aggressive with the female. I had him in the same cage. Big custom habitat, you know, when they were juveniles, but he became so aggressive. Of course, he was attacking her, and I emergency had to build another cage, you know, just real quick to get them separated. So that was necessary as well. You know, depending on if you're having multiple iguanas or not, you know, just keep in mind that, you know, one or both or whatever could get potentially extremely aggressive. And my female was an absolute sweetheart. She was just, you know, no aggression ever. So, you know, I kept them separate. So maybe if you have multiple iguanas, that's something to keep in mind too. You may need two, most likely you'll need two different habitats. But once, you know, again, he got out of that puberty stage and he mellowed out and he was awesome with Sandy. And I mean, they'd cuddle, you know, they'd lay on top of each other and best friends. When she passed, poor guy, he'd come down to the bottom and he would kind of look up above, kind of trying to find her. So that was kind of a bummer. You know, I don't want to introduce a new iguana now at this point. I'm not saying you couldn't, but for his sake, you know, I'm just not. But, you know, no pinch points in the cage is huge. You know, make sure everything's super durable. Because, again, you build something for the iguana thinking it's durable enough, and chances are it may not be. Because their claws, just everything, they just tear stuff up. They're just big, heavy, lunky movers, slow things. I mean, capable of obviously, you know, being quick, but realistically just kind of lunkering around. But yeah, the conversion wasn't too bad. You know, everything's waterproof, water resistant, rather. You know, like I said, when I had the watering feature here, it was very cool. It was very neat with the pumps and the filtration. But you know, it was up and going for, I don't know, maybe a year. But again, it just required too much. There's a drain system in the bottom. I would just kind of route, you know, a hose to the shower down here, and but it just ended up being a lot of maintenance, you know. But for the parents out there, you know, if you're researching on if you should get your child an iguana, like iguanas are awesome pets, but you know, there's times throughout the development that, you know, it can be quite difficult. You know, I don't recommend it. They're definitely considered a more advanced reptile to keep. There's other animals out there, you know. I wouldn't say they're super messy, dirty, but you do have to keep up cleaning on it, you know, otherwise it could smell. My basement never smells, but again, I have routine with all my animals that, you know, I do, you know, some daily, some weekly. For him, it's, you know, changing obviously the paper out and stuff like that pretty frequently, but it's really not that bad. You know, I suggest like a newspaper. You don't want anything down like a sand or a gravel or something. Obviously, you can, you know, easily clean, or like bark chips or something like that. You don't want the iguana to ingest any of that kind of stuff. It could be harmful for them. So just simple newspaper down there. Changing out the newspaper is the easiest. You know, the fake plants and stuff like that, you know, I'll rotate those every few years, or some of them, you know, as he kind of crawls and climbs around and stuff, he'll kind of damage stuff up. But yeah, so it's the closet conversion. Originally, I did want to build a door on it, but decided not to, and it turned out real well. You know, he and Sandy would just really kind of hang out in here, and they'd never really rarely come out, so it kind of just worked. So well, I appreciate your time, and you know, just a couple quick thoughts. You know, this wasn't planned. Normally something I do make it a little more exciting to watch, but you know, just some insight. You know, I didn't see much closet conversions out there, and what I did see, it was just, I mean, as basic and simple as you can get. Not saying it's a bad thing, but you know, put some time, put some thought into it. There's a, you know, proper preparation is definitely key to housing any animal, and some require more than others. I would say an iguana definitely requires more than most reptiles, especially getting into the larger reptiles. Obviously, some are a lot more difficult to house, but you know, iguana is definitely not like a leopard gecko or crested gecko, for example, and those are great animals to have, absolutely, and maybe something to consider, you know, for those getting into keeping reptiles. You know, something simple. Snakes are great pets. Love snakes, ball pythons, those kinds of things. That's a whole nother conversation though, reticulated. You know, when I see those for sale at the pet stores and stuff, you know, they're different species, but sometimes you got to be careful how large a snake you potentially could be getting. But yeah, with the iguanas, you know, they get big. Their claws are sharp. I don't clip his, clearly. Just not necessary for me. Helps him obviously move around within his environment too. So there's the closet. All right, thank you.